Okay, but do you even like art? Suppose you go to a museum and see a Renaissance-style sculpture. It fills you with awe, and you feel changed by what it tells you about the vitality and divinity of the human form. Wow. Now suppose you read the placard, and it says, made in 1995 by a boomer from Ohio who mass manufactured it and sold copies to rich dentists to put in their McMansions. Is there some sense in which, retroactively, you were wrong to feel awe and inner transformation? A sense in which it would have been correct to have deep feelings about the nature of humanity if it had been by a real Renaissance master, but now it's embarrassing? Suppose that the sense of artistic responsibility or a sense of cringe causes you to root these feelings out of yourself until you can only regard the sculpture with snide contempt. And then the curator tells you that the placard was a prank and that the sculpture was actually by Michelangelo after all. So we have this like switching of your feelings. If you genuinely believe in the power of art to awe and transformation, it's strange to also care about its novelty and its provenance. That just means its history, where it came from, who made it, or who owned it. It would be as if people took medications based on how cool the story behind their invention was. Everyone agreed that the medications treat diseases. Everyone agrees that the cool stories contribute nothing to their efficacy. That's not true. Of course, the cool stories contribute to their efficacy. We just talked about the placebo effect, did we not? Okay. But people had somehow forgotten to philosophically separate their disease-curing attribute from their fascinating provenance. And doctors would constantly be saying things like, sure, Abilify works just as well as Thorazine with fewer side effects, but it's boring and derivative, so take Thorazine instead. That's strange to me, because I feel like you can give people effective drugs and also add the placebo effect in there. You can just say, like, this is the best drug ever created. These are the first guys who've made it, and they've continued to progress and innovate and improve their formula over the years. And also other companies have tried to make derivative copies of it, and they're okay. But this company is the one that is at the forefront of progress with curing whatever it is that you want to be cured. And look at the logo. The logo is cool. And don't you remember the logo too? You have so much confidence that this is going to work. Like if you literally like placebo up somebody, give them a real drug and give them the bunch of the placebo, it's going to make it more effective. I don't see what the problem is with that. So I guess he's just giving a negative example, and I can just as easily give a positive example of this sort of thing there. Okay, so there's that. Secondly, I do think that, okay, I skipped over a part. Well, I did skip over, but I didn't comment. I think it would be a problem if somebody felt awe or some sort of inner transformation with a work of art, and then they learned where it came from, and then they kind of felt embarrassed about it. I don't think it's wrong to feel a transformation. I don't even understand what that means. Like, it's not wrong to feel something when you appreciate a work of art. You can determine whether or not it's bad art and still feel good when appreciating the work of art. Like the goodness or badness does not say anything about your appreciation of it in a particular context. The goodness or badness of it is talking about how widespread it is. Let me try to, okay, so like, just because I understand that Newtonian mechanics is false and that Einstein mechanics is more true than Newtonian mechanics, and that it is always better to ignore Newtonian mechanics in favor of Einstein mechanics, because Einstein mechanics is always better, right? Just because I know that does not mean that I should be embarrassed that I can use Newtonian mechanics in some situations, and that it is helpful in some situations. That is not a problem. Just because I know it's false, just because I know it's bad art, let's say, in this case, that does not mean that it is a problem for me to use it and enjoy it and have it cause transformations that are helpful to me. It is not a problem, right? You can like works of art that you understand are bad, but you also understand that they work in a particular narrow context, in that context, including your life and your mind and whatever your mental constitution at the time. So If you like like you can watch some shitty anime, and there's a lot of them. Let me tell you, you can watch some shitty anime that you like, and you recognize that only you would like, and very small subsection of people would like, and after one generation, no one else is going to like this work of art because it doesn't have anything that's universal at all, and it is limited to some particular subculture context. And it is totally fine to still like it, because the fact that it can transform in some contexts is not a problem. That is understanding the context in which it can cause transformations is the appreciation of the work of art. Am I making sense here? Am I making sense here? Can somebody tell me if I'm making sense here? The fact that you can appreciate something is not bad. It is not a problem to like bad art. It is not a problem to understand science that is false. It is not a problem to understand how horoscopes work. It's not a problem to understand how the epicycles of the planets work, right? If you understand the context in which the epicycles, given the geocentric view of the Earth, and if you understood when it would be appropriate to use the epicycles to predict the position of Mercury or Mars or any other planet, that would be interesting, and it would be totally fine for you to do that and use that as a valid use of that knowledge and make the transformations and appreciate it and be like, wow, this is cool, and it was helpful in my situation, in this narrow situation. But it is only helpful in this narrow situation, and it would be better if I used Newtonian mechanics or Einstein's mechanics to try to figure out the position of the planets. Am I making sense here? Okay. Can somebody in the comments tell me if I'm making sense? All right. By the way, I want you to comment and like this video and tell me what you're thinking about these things, because there's a lot of stuff that's being said and a lot of thoughts that are being sparked in me. And I imagine if it's sparking thoughts in me, it's sparking thoughts in you. There are a lot of comments also on this article, so it's sparking thoughts in people. Okay. So let's spark those thoughts in these comments too. All right. The synthesis here, so obvious that many of you are probably screaming at me to address it, is that the first few Renaissance statues that you see should awe you and transform your mind, whether they are by Michelangelo or by some talented forger. But that by your 100th statue, and your mind has already been transformed in this particular way, you should move on to other things. Okay, I don't think that's true, but maybe. Okay, I agree. This weasels out of the problem, but it is not how real art lovers behave. If a Michelangelo exhibition came to town today, their art lovers wouldn't say, sorry, I've learned everything I can from Renaissance statues. I can only benefit from modern art now, right? And it's almost as if really good art is inexhaustible. Now, I don't know if that's actually true, but there's a lot of things within works of art like that, like Michelangelo's works of art. There are a lot more things that you can learn from them. There's lots of knowledge embodied in Michelangelo's statues that you can appreciate and understand, and then apply to the rest of your world and transform how you see the world. I don't think you're going to get it from one or two viewings. I mean, maybe you could. I don't know. It's just I just don't know. I don't think you can get it from a few viewings. They would attend this exhibition and claim to be awed and transformed yet again. If a new Michelangelo statue was discovered, it would be a great event in the art world. And there was something like this that happened with the Da Vinci painting 10 years ago. And the people who say that they were awed and transformed by art will feel awed and transformed by it again. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I guess I think I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think I would be awed or transformed by a Michelangelo statue, though I've never seen a Michelangelo statue. So I don't know. I don't know. I also don't think it's relevant. I don't think the awe is the part that matters. The transformation, there depends on what the transformation is, but it's the understanding of the knowledge that is embodied in this work of art, which is presented in a way that is noticeable so that they can replicate into your mind, from the work of art into your mind. That is the thing that is important. And I think it'd be very difficult to find a painting or a statue that had some knowledge embodied in it that could replicate into your mind that was not replicated also into some other artist's mind that also influenced the flow of all art after. It's not like Michelangelo had some sort of new knowledge that was in a statue that he used to make a statue, or that is presented in his statue. That's some new knowledge embodied in a statue that no one else picked up on, that was actually useful, or actual knowledge that led to progress, and that we can discover today, and then we would like be awed by it and then continue the tradition. It just seems kind of weird to me. I don't think it's possible. So in that sense, I think we do have all the things already from Michelangelo. I don't know. I feel like I'm saying something here unclearly, but I don't know how to say it more clearly. There's a lot of knowledge embodied in Michelangelo. You can still find more of that knowledge embodied if you revisit Michelangelo, but you're not going to find something that's like going to be transformative in terms of how you view all art going forward. You know what I mean? You're not going to find this sort of like knowledge embodied in Michelangelo or any painting or sculpture that is like rediscovered from the past that had no effect on the course of art that will have an effect now once it is discovered. So I just want to transform, like I want to transform the analogy to something that's more like stuff that I understand, because like I like music. So like if I listen to John Coltrane, I'm going to learn new ways of making jazz and listening to jazz. And that's going to be very transformative and interesting and great for me to learn when I first encountered John Coltrane. And, every time as I understand John Coltrane more deeply, I'm going to get most of the big things out of that, and it's going to be great. And then you might in the future have older recordings from John Coltrane, like master tapes that were not released before, and those be released. And those are going to be nice because you're going to have the same knowledge that was embodied in all the other works, and you're going to be able to see them presented in new ways. But it's not going to be like the presentation of new knowledge. It's the same knowledge that you had embodied in the other works. And it is interesting and fun to listen to the new work, that newly discovered work, with the same old knowledge. And it's also great because you have the tools to appreciate it, because you've learned from older John Coltrane stuff that you've actually that's already transformed you, so you can appreciate the art better already. So it's good to have. But it's not like there are two different forms of transformation that I'm not untangling as I'm speaking. So I've got to figure that out and figure out how to talk about that better. Yes, I think it would be nice to have art recovered from great artists. I don't think it will be particularly transformative or like change the course of history or the future history. I don't think it's going to be like this sort of new knowledge that is revelatory or anything. I think it would be nice. I, for one, even like derivative works of art. Like I like listening to Beethoven and learning all of the things that Beethoven created and how he influenced art, classical music after Beethoven, how he influenced it. I like that a lot, and I want to hear Beethoven's works. I also want to hear the derivative works that are derivative of Beethoven that actually embody the knowledge in different contexts. I like that too. I want to hear that and see those different things in different contexts. So there's a difference of having the presentation of new knowledge, and that be wide-reaching knowledge, and it can fit into many different contexts. And then actually having that new knowledge be put into different contexts and then appreciating in those different contexts. Right? Those are two slightly different things. And that's what I think he's pointing at. He's not pointing at it in the way that I'm pointing at it, obviously, but that's the thing that I want to untangle here. If we found a new Michelangelo painting, or sorry, sculpture, we would be seeing another context in which that knowledge is being applied. But the real important thing is the knowledge that Michelangelo created. And that's in most of his statues already. So you don't really need any particular statue to have that appreciation. I think that reconciled the things that I'm talking about. I got to figure out a cleaner way of explaining that, but I think it's fair to point it out as a seeming contradiction, and I need to have a good explanation that resolves that conflict. I think I have it. I just haven't worded it properly. Okay, we're going to keep going because there's still more of this article. But also, Scott Alexander continues, this is not my personal experience of loving great art. I have no taste in the visual arts, but I love some poetry, enough that I'm willing to make the cringe statement that it awes and transforms me. Not every poem, not even every poem by universally recognized great poets, but some small subset of poets consistently astonish me. If my usual response to modern art is, I could draw that with a bucket of crayons in 10 minutes, my response to a really good poem is, I couldn't write that in 10 million years. Okay. Don't sell yourself short, guy. Come on, man, you can do it. A really good poem, especially now that you have the knowledge of the actual existing. Okay. A really good poem fails. So a really good poem feels like an artifact sent down from some god to prove his superiority to mortals, and an impossible flex by a brain light years beyond my own. Man, all right, this sort of like denial of universality. Of course, we can all create new knowledge, and but the thing that he's pointing out here is that a good poem has knowledge embodied in it that must have been created through this sort of really hard trial and error process to get this beautiful and lots of different beautiful things, to get this like finished product that is hard to vary. You can't change it easily, and you're kind of stunned by how well it fits together, how well adapted it is to its purpose. And you can't think of alternatives, and it's great. Okay, so it seems like it's bestowed by God to prove his superiority, right? That's what he means here. He's just saying that they found some really good knowledge and they're presenting it. And then as you're reading it, you're like challenging the knowledge and trying to, see if you could change it and put it into different contexts. And in that, you find that the knowledge is actually very good. And you can't change it. And so it feels like it was created by some superior being. Okay, that's kind of the metaphor. That's my interpretation of the metaphor in my own language. Okay. I've read most of the poems by the really great poets who I like. I should say, by the way, I don't like poetry. I just never liked poetry. Okay. I like a little bit, like there's a little bit of Edgar Allan Poe who I like because I like his rhythm. I like Emily Dickinson's. I like her rhythm too, but I could not tell you anything that the poem's about. I just like how it sounds and I like how it feels when I say it because I read them aloud. But gosh, I don't know what the poems are about. I don't really care. I don't understand them in any way. I just like the rhythm. Anyway, it's just, I like music. It's kind of a musical thing. Anyway, I'm just off topic. You got to stay focused, boys. Okay. I've read most poems by the really great poets who I like. I'll use G.K. Chesterton as an example, since a reader reviewed his work in one of our contests. I don't feel like I have exhausted my appreciation of those poems, or that my love of novelty drives me on to want something different. If someone discovered a book of 100 lost Chesterton poems, I would treat it as Christmas, Hanukkah, and my birthday all at once. Yes. And I feel if I read those poems and enjoyed them and agreed that they were really as good as Chesterton's best work elsewhere, but the discovery triumphantly revealed that they have been a forgery the whole time, this would plunge me into some kind of aesthetic crisis. Oh, interesting. I would not feel this crisis. I would just like the poems. Who cares if it's a derivative work, if it's embodying the knowledge that you want to see embodied in new contexts? It's like just showing you all the new contexts that the work of art can be, the beauty of that work of art can be embodied in. When you have beauty embodied in a work of art and you think it's wide reaching, then you're like, yeah, it's wide reaching. Yes, great. And then you actually have the example of it being wide reaching by putting it into different works of art, right? That's great. That's even better. You can see the actual, examples. It's like the evidence that it is wide reaching. And then have it jump through different, let's say different artists, have it jump through different genres, have it jump through different mediums and so on. That's all just corroborating the fact that you have wide-reaching knowledge. Okay, anyway, that would not plunge me into some sort of aesthetic crisis, and I don't know why it would for anybody else. So that's something I just don't personally understand. In the best case scenario, I decide the forger was some kind of 1 in a billion talent, just as Chesterton was, in which case I would happily consider him to be one of my favorite poets, Maybe less than a genius than Chesterton since he didn't come up with the style, but no less delightful to read. Yes, yes. But if I didn't have that opinion, by the way, not a genius, but you still, whatever, it would just go along. If I didn't have that opinion, maybe the forger exhaustively trained and tested random members of the population and found that 5% of people could write as well as Chesterton if prompted correctly and randomly sampled from that 5% to produce his fake book, then my crisis would be deeper, but maybe more productive. I would glut myself on Chesterton-quality poems until I really did get bored with them. I don't know how long that would take, maybe forever. If it took some limited amount of time, then next I would ask myself, if the top percent of the population can write Chesterton-quality poems, given the right training and prompt, doesn't that imply that the top 0.0001% of the population, given the same, could write even better poems? How do we identify those people? How do we get them to drop what they're doing now and write those masterpieces? That's a fucking great question. How do we do it? But I hope I wouldn't say, oh, 5% of the population can write Chesterton-quality poems. Wow, I didn't know that. You're telling me for the first time, but I still like Chesterton better because he was the first person to write in that style, and I don't care at all about any of those other people. I have no follow-up questions. Right. Right. That would be weird. If I say that, I feel like I would feel contempt for myself. I would have to abandon all claim I have to true poetry appreciation. Yes, you would. You don't have the appreciation of beauty. You're appreciating the history of a particular person. Totally different things. Anyone who says such a thing is obviously doesn't like poetry as such. They like, I don't know, the experience of affiliating themselves with cool, famous poets, right? When people say, I think it's really cool that this Impressionist painting was one of the first Impressionist paintings ever, and not just some random modern version of an Impressionist painting that didn't even participate in the original discussions around Impressionism, I want to answer, okay, but do you like art? Fantastic question. Do you like art? Do you actually appreciate beauty?